How did you feel when you watched the scenes on Clapham Common last night?
I felt angry, and I felt really sad and sorry for every copper I've ever worked with who has tried to improve the police's relationship with vulnerable women over the years. And I think that everything that the Metropolitan Police did yesterday, which incidentally I have to say was not marked the same across the country. West Midlands Police held a vigil, and it was completely and utterly well managed and perfectly fine. Nottingham the same, as I'm sure you might know, Gloria. But I think that the Metropolitan Police have made some terrible, terrible mistakes. It was avoidable. And I think it sets back the police's relationship with women who might need to come forward about rape and domestic abuse.
You know, feminists, we often call for more women to be in leadership positions. We actually have one at the Met. We have one in Cressida Dick. Would you have expected a woman to be more sensitive to the calls to hold that peaceful vigil?
Look, I like to think so, but you know, the reality is that my feminism isn't based on the fact that all women always get everything right at all times. And actually, I think that sometimes that is the failure when people think that that's what feminism is. Women are allowed to make mistakes and missteps just as much as men, but when women make them, unfortunately, for some reason, it has to be pinned on all womankind. A bit like Theresa May, it was just like, you know, she's sort of proven maybe that women shouldn't be leaders, and it's just like, well, nobody ever said that about, you know, male leaders who struggled in that position. So look, I wish that Cressida Dick had handled this better. I wish that Cressida Dick had taken leadership previously on other issues around violence against women and girls. I wish that Cressida Dick could see a way to trying to work with us around misogyny as a hate crime. But I'm sure that Cressida Dick and I can find lots of things that we would agree on.
Okay, Priti Patel is, of course, the Home Secretary, and we read in today's Sunday Times that she's considering new laws to protect women against sexual harassment in public. And the article points to a database of violent men, which might serve as an early warning system. Now, how could that operate successfully? For example, if I was single, I met a guy, I wanted to date that guy, would it need to be something that I can sort of look online to see if this man that I've met has any history of harassment or abuse? How would it work?
Well, I mean, that already exists, actually, Gloria. It was called Clare's Law, is the sort of moniker that is given to it. And you can't look online. Obviously, there's all sorts of data issues that go along with this, but you can speak to your local police force, or your local police force can take the action to tell you if you are going out with a serial offender, if they know about it. Clare's Law has never, in reality, actually operated in the way that I think that people would have wanted it to. And so this I was about to say this idea by the government, but it's absolutely not an idea by the government. It is an amendment that was tabled by the opposition at the domestic abuse bill stages in the Commons, which the government rejected. And in fact, it was being tabled by a Labour peer on Monday in the House. It is the government is currently catching up, and I welcome them coming over to an argument that has been being put forward for about 2.5 years. It's nice to see them finally arrive. But what they're putting forward, I think, is to try and make what was essentially Clare's Law be a much more robust process, so that people can look up and not look up. Look up is too glib a phrase. That there is a way of accessing information about whether you are or not safe in a relationship.
Now, of course, you and I as women can talk till the cows come home about the scourge of violence against women. It's men that need to do some talking, though. I'm sure there are a lot of men listening right now. If they want to be allies in this, what advice would you give them?
The first piece of advice I would give them is that being an ally is not about seeking praise and trying to, sort of look the best. It is about genuinely listening to what we're saying. And I think for the first time, actually, in this instance, it's not that men necessarily feel like we're attacking them. It's that they cannot believe the level of Oh gosh, the work that women have been having
Mm.
to do, the level of thought that has to go into almost every action that we take when we leave the house, and in fact when we stay in the house. And I think that they might be hearing. But the thing I would ask men to do as allies is listen to the women in their lives, ask them what would make them feel safer, and try and implement that. But above all else, I would say, please, could you speak up when you see bad things happening? I keep giving the example of my husband, who spoke up against two blokes drinking tinnies on a park bench. Me and my sons and my husband were in the park. A woman runs past with earphones in. They start heckling her, shouting at her. She runs on. She probably can't hear them, which she probably did on purpose, and she probably thought about it before she left the house. And my husband, I didn't even notice, because it's misogyny like that has just become completely and utterly normalised to me. But my husband stopped in his tracks, and he went and had a massive go at them. And maybe what I hope he's giving them is a bit of pause for thought next time, that they'll look around and make sure that no one's there. And in that moment of looking around, they'll think, maybe I shouldn't say this. That's what I'd like male allyship to look like in this instance, is to listen and to act. Um, when you see people behaving poorly, because if I speak back to a load of blokes on a building site who are shouting at somebody, if I shout back, they can't hear me. They'll just be like, oh, some woman, oh, you're just joyless. Oh, we're only trying to be flattering. But if a man says, do you know what, blokes, call it off, quit it, they'll be able to hear much better. For some reason, we're harder to hear.
Mm. Indeed. Now, let's take a look at the Labour Party. 2 Keers, but not a single woman elected to lead the Labour Party.
Yeah,
Why?
no.
Why?
Well, I think that, like in all institutions, Gloria, as you know, that men are more likely to rise to the top. But you're absolutely right to put that charge against the Labour Party. It's not on, is it? It's a bit of an embarrassment.
In 2018, Karen Monaghan QC was commissioned by the Labour Party to undertake an independent review of the party's procedures.
Mm-hmm.
That was following a party activist who said she was raped at a Labour Party event, but pressured into not making a complaint about it. It was completed in 2018. Should it have been published?
I mean, I think that, within reason of people's confidentiality and everything, I think that it should absolutely be being, the pertinent recommendations of it should be being made available to people so that we can improve things. But the Labour Party, I think at the moment, has turned a corner and is on a journey to try and massively improve how it handles complaints of such kind. And I have been at the forefront of it and have worked with almost all of the victims who have come forward. But all political parties, I'm walking around the halls of Westminster at the moment with people who are accused of all sorts of things, and I don't feel that there's been any sort of protections put in place for me. When the whole Me Too movement happened, there was, a sort of flurry of interest, and we're all going to act, we're all going to do things. And actually, we need to reignite that now, not just the Labour Party. And believe me when I say that the Labour Party, I guess, to blow my own trumpet a bit, that them having me there means that I have absolutely no doubt that they will improve. But what are the Conservative Party doing about it? What is Ed Davey doing about it in the Liberal Democrats? And what is Parliament doing to make sure the things that we set in motion to change is actually changing things? And what we can't have, in the terrible, terrible light of Sarah Everard's murder, and it has created a moment, and I just, to send love and thoughts to her family, because it's very, very difficult for them, and for them to be having to see how this now, the momentum is building around Sarah, is we cannot let that down. And the Me Too movement led to no direct changes, actually, that I can see in the law for women in the workplace. There was tinkering around the edges in politics, but those changes still need to be tested in the Labour Party and in Parliament and in the Conservative Party and in the Liberal Party. But we actually have to make change happen, and action has to happen after this across the board in every institution, including the ones that I'm part of.
I'm interested in the processes in the Labour Party. You'll know your colleague Mike Hill, Labour MP for Hartlepool, was accused of groping and inappropriately touching a woman who worked in the House of Commons. Mr Hill strongly denies the allegations. He was suspended from the Parliamentary Labour Party in September 2019. The whip was restored the following month. I'm not sure what the processes are here. The final hearing for that case is this May. It's in a couple of months.
The final hearing within the Labour Party, or the
The
final
final
hearing?
hearing, the tribunal.
Of a tribunal, yeah. Okay, look, just to be clear, is that I know obviously about this case, and I have. It's very, very difficult for me, Gloria, to speak without not breaching people's confidentialities and making this a political tool. The Labour Party complaint is not the same as the tribunal complaint. And in fact, the tribunal complaint needs to run its course before the Labour Party complaint can do, because one might prejudice another, which is just like why we're all really worried about talking about the Sarah Everard cases, because we have to be really careful. And that's a message that should be sent, that we don't say things that prejudice the cases in these instances. But the Labour Party process cannot go on, or it's very hard for me not to say that the victim, stuff that the victim has said to me in these instances, and so it's quite difficult for me to talk about this case. But all I can say is that I think that the processes should be just as robust about Mike Hill. The tribunal should be very robust. The Labour Party needs to be very robust about all of these allegations about anyone in the Labour Party. I don't care which position they hold, if they're a member of Parliament, if they're a local volunteer. And I feel exactly the same way about the Conservatives. And what I have felt recently as a woman in politics is that actually, am I any safer in Westminster since all of these actions have been taken? I'm not sure that I am.
Jess Phillips, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.